Let's go ahead and get this started. Okay. Hello, Gamecock Nation. Welcome back to the Locked On Gamecocks podcast, your show for daily headlines and potential storylines on your favorite South Carolina Gamecock sports teams. I'm your host, Andrew Lyon, and as always, thank you for making the Locked On Gamecocks podcast your first watch or listen here today. We are free and available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts daily. And before we get into this live reaction edition of the Locked On Gamecocks podcast, I want to let y'all know that today's show is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online is where the game starts. What a big day it is for South Carolina and their football program as head man Shane Beamer, who, of course, just capped off what was a remarkable 2022 season for South Carolina, a season which saw the Gamecocks accomplish multiple feats that hadn't been done in several years. And all that has led to this piece of news, as Shane Beamer has received a new contract that is going to pay him a little over $33 million throughout the next 5 years, all the way through 2027. So the overall takeaway is pretty simple here on today's live reaction show. This contract is a profound message that the administration and the athletic department are all behind Coach Beamer. Now, with his contract, I'm not going to go into all the nitty-gritty details, but here's sort of the simple surface level details. He's going to be paid $6.125 million starting in 2023, and Shane Beamer is going to see a $250,000 bump every single year thereafterwards. And in 2027, the final year of this contract, he will get paid $7.125 million. So obviously, I don't think anybody's going to have really a massive argument over this contract. I think that this contract personally is well deserved for Coach Beamer, considering the program that he inherited, the toxic culture and environment, quite frankly, that had manifested under his predecessor in Will Muschamp during his time here in Columbia. Coach Beamer, of course, has flipped that overnight. He has now gotten 15 wins for the Gamecocks over the last 2 years, and things are bright for South Carolina as they, of course, have secured multiple high-level prospects, both on the recruiting trail and in the transfer portal. Zach, I see your message. To respond to that real quick, the website that I'm going to do this live stream through, it's going to be a little bit choppy. It's going to be a little bit static, so I apologize in advance if it really annoys y'all. I promise you, I'm going to try to get this all figured out over the next couple of weeks by maybe making a move to a different website. So needless to say, let's get back to the show at hand real quick. Compared to his peers, when looking at Coach Beamer's new contract and how it looks compared to the rest of the coaches in the SEC, Coach Beamer is going to be the 11th highest paid coach in the conference, at least based on annual salary heading into the 2023 season. Right now, he's currently sandwiched between Sam Pittman, who's expected to make, I believe, $6.2 million based on his contract, and Josh Heupel, who currently makes $5 million a year up in Knoxville. But obviously, with the season that Tennessee just had, he's probably going to get a massive bump and extension in his own right, probably within the next few weeks, especially now that Coach Beamer has gotten this new contract. So when you hear that Coach Beamer is the 11th highest paid coach in the conference, that might sound like it's a little bit outrageous, but the bottom line is, y'all, this is the job market now for high-level Power 5 college football coaches. You're seeing a lot more coaches now than before making double-digit millions of dollars every single year. I believe there's 2 or 3 of them right now that currently exist in the SEC. I think you got Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, and Brian Kelly, I want to say, also makes $10+ million a year. Might be wrong on that. But bottom line, those guys have set the market. And then you have all the other qualifiers that you take into consideration. How long have these guys coached in the SEC? How long have they been in a head coach period at the Power 5 level? What have they done in their careers? I noted something when I was looking back at some of the SEC coaches and what they're making currently. The top 7 paid coaches based on annual salary right now in the SEC have all either been a head coach in college football for a very long time, tenured in the SEC maybe, or they have secured a double-digit win season at either one or multiple stops. And as good as Shane Beamer has been so far in Columbia, he has not accomplished either of those two things yet. Of course, with the way that South Carolina has continuously progressed under his watch in just the last couple of years. If they continue to do so, maybe they get a 10 or 11 win season at some point. Uh, Obviously, Gamecock fans hope that Shane Beamer is going to be around in Columbia for a very long time. Then I have no doubt that Shane Beamer will have a chance in maybe the next couple years to see an even better contract down the road. When looking at some of the coaches that have coached in the SEC for 3 years or less in their whole career, Coach Beamer is sixth out of those 9 coaches. And again, that just points to how much the job market has changed in the sport of college football when it comes to head coach salaries that you see with all of these new contracts. So again, overall, this contract is very important. Now, of course, when you go to a recruit's home and you're trying to give them your pitch for why they should come to South Carolina, why they may want to go to South Carolina, the first thing that you're going to throw out to them is not going to be the fact that, hey, the head coach here makes $6+ million a year. Obviously, that one fact alone is not going to maybe tell a prospect or let a prospect know or help them make the decision that they're going to, be a Gamecock. That sole factor isn't going to do something like that. But these coaching contracts are very important to let other people know just how committed the school is to that coaching staff. And it all starts with the head coach himself. And so for Coach Beamer to get this kind of deal, it says a lot about what South Carolina thinks regarding what he has done in just the first 2 years that he has been here at South Carolina. Real quickly before we get into our first break, if you are watching this live stream right now, first of all, thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate it. And secondly, I am going to answer some questions at the end of this reaction show. So if you got any questions for me, it could be literally anything from recruiting to the team, the coaches, some of the contracts I'm going to discuss in a couple minutes, anything, feel free to drop them in the chat while you're watching the show on YouTube or on Restream. But with that being said, as I mentioned, Coach Beamer is not the only coach that got a new deal today. There was multiple assistant coaches that saw either an extension, a raise, or both. Who were those coaches? We're going to dive into that in just a couple of moments right here on Locked On Gamecocks. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Built Bar. Now, maybe you have come up with a New Year's resolution that this is the year that you're going to get in shape. You're going to change your health, your lifestyle, and you're going to try to maybe, increase your fitness levels. And you're looking for a new protein bar, but you don't want all the fat content, all the calories. You don't want something that's going to literally taste like maybe it's a chalky protein bar because of all the whey protein that they've put in it. If you're looking for a protein bar that isn't that, then you got to try out Built Bar, the protein bar that can help you accomplish your goals this new year. They aren't just healthy, they're extremely enjoyable. They're covered in 100% real chocolate. And they got a variety of flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, and much, much more. These bars are only 130 calories, including just 4 grams of protein and a whopping 17 grams. Including just 4 grams of sugar, there you go, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And you can get these bars now at both Walmart and Sam's Club in your local area. If you go to Walmart, go to the pharmacy section and grab yourself a 4-bar box that includes cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. And if you go to Sam's Club, you can get a 13-bar box that includes brownie batter and churro. I promise you, you'll thank me later because Built Bar is where tasty is the new healthy. Thank y'all, by the way, for making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen every day. Make sure to check out our brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball, where you'll find everything you need to know about college basketball in one place. Plus, you'll hear from big-name experts, insiders, coaches, and players. Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, now let's talk about some of the other miscellaneous notes, some of the other contracts that were amended at this Board of Trustees meeting that took place on Friday afternoon. Starting off with a promotion that took place with offensive line coach Lonnie Teasley, who has been the interim offensive line coach for the rest of the 2022 season. Took place about a third to halfway through the year after it was reported that Greg Atkins was unfortunately dealing with some more minor health issues, which was something that plagued him during the 2021 season. That was reported, of course, back in the springtime, sort of after all that had played out. And Lonnie Teasley apparently is now the permanent offensive line coach. He was given a 2-year deal worth $410,000 annually. Greg Atkins has not necessarily been demoted, but he is now going to step back into more of an analyst role, which basically means he's going to help out a lot more with game planning, sort of watching film. And to top it all off, he's not going to have to travel a bunch of places and recruit. He went with Lonnie Teasley on a bunch of recruiting visits to see some of the prospects the Gamecocks just secured in this current class, like Oluwatosin Babalade and a couple of others. So seeing those photos kind of gave a bit of an inkling that, this might be a move that was coming down the pipe. And sure enough, that is indeed what has now taken place. I think this is a really good move for South Carolina. Lonnie Teasley, of course, is familiar with the program. He's been involved with it since Shane Beamer started here at South Carolina. And I mean, my gosh, he was already coaching up these guys this past season. And from what I could tell, especially from about halfway through the year onward, I felt like the offensive line did a much better job overall. And keeping Greg Atkins around, keeping him in a, again, more laid back role where he's not going to be asked to do quite as much. He could still get paid a decent salary being in this analyst role, but again, he's not going to have to go through all the rigors that an on-field analyst has to with all of the recruiting and all the traveling that they have to do. So I think that's really cool that Greg Atkins is going to still be involved in the program. I think this is a great move for both parties. Lonnie Teasley now gets his first real big shot as an offensive line coach in the SEC, and, maybe younger and maybe a little bit better able to handle, again, everything that's been going on. And for Greg Atkins, again, health is his number one priority. Of course, you want him to be able to do this for as long as he wants. And for him to be in an analyst role, again, not quite as much responsibilities, not quite as strenuous. I think it's a fantastic move that was made by Shane Beamer and this administration. Now, moving on from Lonnie Teasley, that was the one promotion or demotion, however you want to, term it, that has taken place. Some of the other assistants that got new deals, Torian Gray was the most notable out of all the other assistants. He now is going to be on a new 3-year contract that is going to pay him quite a bit. He's going to be making $650,000 in year one. In 2024, he'll make $700,000, and the final year of this deal, he'll be making $750,000. So he's getting a $50,000 pay bump in his second and third year of this contract, and he's going to be making a little over $2 million cumulatively. So Torian Gray getting paid quite handsomely here with this new deal. One that I think is definitely well-deserved. Torian Gray has been, in my opinion, one of the better performing assistant coaches on Shane Beamer's staff since Shane Beamer started here at South Carolina. He's done quite a remarkable job at developing the talent that he inherited on the roster while also being able to recruit both guys that are going to, in my opinion, be some solid players down the road, excuse me if I can speak English, and also bringing in some players that might be considered to be some diamonds in the rough, but guys that have unique skill sets that could be molded into some really solid defensive backs in the SEC. So once again, keep it short and sweet. Torian Gray, in my opinion, well-deserved contract here that he's getting. Montero Hardesty, he got an extension on his current deal that is now going to extend his contract through the 2024 season. So it's a 2-year deal, paying him $400,000 annually. That's kind of the same way that the rest of these contracts all worked out. They were mainly just extensions, but they did get some raises. Lindsey and Sterling Lucas are both now on 2-year deals, paying $475,000 annually. And Clayton White, South Carolina's defensive coordinator, he did get an extension and a slight bump in his contract salary, as he's now going to be getting a 3-year deal that'll pay him $1.2 million annually. So that contract is going to go all the way through the 2025 season, while Hardesty's, Lindsey's, and Lucas's contracts all go through the 2024 season. So, in my opinion, a lot of well-deserved contracts there. I think that the answer, or excuse me, the message that's being sent here by Shane Beamer is that Shane Beamer is a guy that believes in coaching stability. He is not somebody that is maybe okay with having just a continuous revolving door with some of his assistant coaches. He thinks that having guys that are in this program, guys that can grow on this staff and really get to know these players over the long term and not just, be here for a year or two and jump into another spot. Coach Beamer obviously believes that that's something that is very vital and important, especially in today's college football. And I think that's the message that's being sent here with all these contracts. Plus, if you notice, each of these assistants are now making $400,000 annually. So, pretty big deal here. And it also tells you that the assistant coaching pool, the assistant coaching salary pool has been increased to make all of these moves. And I think that was really noticeable whenever Lonnie Teasley's contract was leaked. His was the first one that got leaked out of all these coaches. And when I saw $410,000 for Lonnie Teasley, part of me felt like that this was coming for a lot of these other assistant coaches. And of course, they started to trickle out one after the other after that. So again, really tells a lot about the confidence that the athletic department and the administration has, not just with Shane Beamer, but with all of these coaches, to not turn any of these contracts down that were proposed to him, I believe, by, of course, Ray Tanner and maybe some of the other big-time players in that athletic department. All right, so we've covered pretty much the meat of all the news that has taken place on this lovely Friday afternoon. Once again, I thank y'all for having tuned into today's show and live reaction to all this stuff that has gone down in just the last couple of hours. I'll take the remaining bit of time that I'm going to have left on this live stream to answer any questions that y'all have. I see so far that it's only one person, Zach Anderson. But again, anyone else has any questions, recruiting, the team itself, the coaches, 2023, you name it, drop it down in the comment section on YouTube or on Restream, wherever you're watching this. Zach Anderson asked a couple of questions here. Any transfers from Power 5 schools looking promising to come to Carolina? Zach, as of this moment, I could not name one, honestly. And that's not to say that South Carolina isn't taking any flyers on anyone that is currently in the Power 5 ranks and in the transfer portal. I just think that, honestly, South Carolina is pretty confident in the guys that they still have on this roster. I do think, of course, there are some guys that are still going to target in the portal, but recently, the two main ones I've heard are both offensive line targets, Marcellus Johnson from Eastern Michigan and Sidney Fugard from Western Illinois, who, ironically enough, happens to be on an official visit right this moment. That official visit started today, so that's going to go throughout Saturday or Sunday, and I believe that Fugard, based on reports from Phil Kornblut of Sports Talk Media Network, is actually going to be making an announcement here very soon. So that's sort of the latest on the transfer portal front in regards to any targets that I can really validate at this moment in time. And then any word on Juice or Rattler's return or departure? No, nothing else on their departure or return subsequently at this moment. I will say this. I did read Chris Lowe's article earlier today. Excuse me. Chris Lowe is an ESPN senior writer. He was the first real major media source, national source, if you want to call him that broke the news of Shane Beamer getting an imminent new contract today. And I went and I read his article, and part of his article talked about Spencer Rattler and Antoine Wells, and it mentioned that there's optimism around the program that both of these guys are going to be coming back. Please take what I just said with a grain of salt. I'm not saying that it's been confirmed both these guys are coming back, but Chris Lowe, who's got his sources, who's very tied into college football, especially in the southeastern region, because he is from down here, lived in South Carolina, and went to Tennessee for college and everything. He has apparently been told that there's optimism around the program that Spencer Rattler and Antoine Wells will return. And I will reiterate this again. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. If Spencer Rattler comes back, I think that you can more than guarantee that Antoine Wells will also probably come back. If Spencer Rattler is not coming back, then, vice versa. Antoine Wells probably would not come back. You'll probably see both those guys gone and heading on to the NFL. So that's the latest I can say. That's the latest I can say reliably on the Juice Wells and Spencer Rattler situation that is ongoing. Kevin Simons, what is the biggest position of need currently? That one I think is pretty easy. I think it's the edge defender, defensive end position, however you want to call it. With all of the guys that have left right now, Jordan Birch, obviously, if you haven't checked out my show today on his departure, go and check that out. I go a lot more in depth regarding what that means for the Gamecocks. But to keep things short and sweet here, you lose him, you lose Hot Rod Finn, who, yes, might have not done as much in 2022, but obviously was still a veteran depth piece, on the roster at that spot. You lose those two guys. Gilbert Edmond more than likely is gone, but he still hasn't made an announcement, on whether or not he's going to go somewhere. So you never know. Door might be still cracked open there. And you have Montague Rames and Desmond Umeozulu coming in as well. And here's the thing, and I mentioned this or responded to a commenter on today's show regarding these two guys. Desmond Umeozulu and Montague Rames, I think, are both very talented freshman defensive ends. I think they're both going to complement each other quite well if they end up starting alongside by side. in the next couple of years. And I think both of them are NFL type players. I really and truthfully believe that, especially with Umeo Zulu. I think that he could be a really stout speed rusher off the edge here at South Carolina with the length, athleticism, and advanced technique he has at his age. The thing is, though, you can't just count on both these guys to come right on in and be immediate instant impact guys. The person that I responded to today mentioned Nick Emenwari and DQ Smith specifically. And while I understand, some people seeing that kind of situation playing out and saying, well, why can't these guys step in? The difference is Emenwari and DQ Smith are both playing positions that don't involve physical contact on every single play in the defensive backfield. Montague Rames and Desmond Zulu are going to be in the line of scrimmage, in the trenches, facing 300-plus pound dudes that are SEC offensive linemen. That is a stark contrast in terms of the responsibilities and the assignments that those guys are going to have. And you also got to think about this. If they don't enroll early and go through spring practice, and they're basically having the whole gamut thrown at them like a kitchen sink in August during fall camp, it's going to make it a lot harder for them to be able to just go right on out there and play. So, long story short, I think that it's the edge position or defensive end position that South Carolina really needs to find some more players right now. A secondary answer I might give is probably the wide receiver spot. I think South Carolina needs to get a couple more guys. There was an offer put out to Elijah Caldwell, Northwestern's own, up here in Rock Hill, South Carolina, earlier today. I'm going to do some film study on him actually maybe not too long after this show or tomorrow, and I will have some stuff coming out in the next couple of days. And, of course, we'll talk about that offer more in depth on our show on Monday. So, probably edge, defensive end, and wide receiver, again, to sum up that entire answer to your question. Kevin Simons with another question. Who starts at quarterback if Rattler leaves? I fully believe that would be Luke Doty. Look, I know that, again, some of y'all might sit here and think that Luke Doty is not a long-term answer, but I will say this till the cows come home. I think that Luke Doty has yet to get a really fair shot to be the starting quarterback at South Carolina. Freshman year was thrown to the fire pit. Head coach had been fired. The offense, quite frankly, had really no receiving threats to speak of that season outside of Shi Smith, at least any consistent receiving threats. And then in 2021, the year that was supposed to be his year to, get some development, have some time to really integrate himself into a new offensive playbook and everything, he gets his foot stepped on in fall camp, and he plays hurt basically for the whole year, and then he has to have surgery. Then Spencer Rattler comes in, and of course, he's not going to start as Spencer Rattler, who transferred from Oklahoma to South Carolina to be the guy here. So if Rattler leaves, I say it's Luke Doty. But I will also say this. Based on stuff I have heard about this kid, do not sleep on Tanner Bailey. He is a stout quarterback. He is a talented quarterback. He can make throws on the run off platform. He has a real accurate intermediate to maybe low, deep range football that he throws. It's a beautiful spiral that comes out of his hand multiple occasions, especially watching his film back when he played football at Gordo High School in Alabama. So that is going to be my answer to that question. I think it would be Doty, but do not sleep on Tanner Bailey. Steve Dickey, I'm late to the discussion, but any word on Rattler? No, Steve, no word on Rattler at this moment in time. Of course, I believe the final, I did not mention this part earlier. I do believe that the final day for people like Spencer Rattler and Antoine Wells to make a decision and basically sign with an NFL agent is January 16th. I think that's been the date in the past. I don't believe that date has been the NCAA. So I believe as of this current moment, if that still remains true, that means they have another 10 days, basically a week and a half to make that final decision. I don't think they would maybe wait that long. Again, wouldn't have any real idea as to what specific time that they would potentially release an announcement. But again, that is the latest on Spencer Rattler and Antoine Wells. If anyone else has any other questions, again, I'll do this for a few more minutes and then I'll probably get off. So feel free to drop it in the chat on YouTube or on Restream, wherever you're watching this live reaction show. I'm going to take a sip of water real quick because I desperately need it. Yes, Steve, absolutely. You're welcome. Any more questions you got, you can feel free to drop it in the chat. I'll give you all a little more time. If no one else has any more questions, then we'll go ahead and call it a day with this live reaction show. Sydney, why did Birch leave? I'm going to assume, Sydney, it was a combination of things. Assuming. I'm not, again, I'm not going to dive into too much speculation. I will assume that maybe he feels like he could be better developed somewhere else. That's not to say, of course, that's not to try to really push any indictment on Sterling Lucas, the defensive end edge coach there. But I think that can maybe be one thing. To sum things up, he probably feels like, I guess, he could up his draft stock if he goes elsewhere, which, again, I know obviously you might have your own opinion regarding that, but I just ask that you keep that to yourself. And again, I did do today's show on Jordan Burch's decision, sort of my full thoughts on that. So, not trying to plug it again, but feel free to go back and check that out because I go way more in depth on today's full show regarding Jordan Burch and his decision to enter the portal. Anybody else got any decisions or, excuse me, questions? So focused on, yeah, that is the next part. Spencer Rattler and Antoine Wells' decisions. And of course, Jordan Burch's decision that, yeah, that's probably the next big piece of news that's coming down the pipe now these contracts have been figured out. But, all right. Well, I'm tripping over my own words a lot now. Getting near the end of this show, definitely wiped out, I think, at this point. And it looks like no one else has any questions. So thank y'all so much for tuning into today's show. I really appreciate y'all hopping on in here for this quick live reaction edition of Locked On Gamecocks. What are your thoughts on Shane Beamer's new contract? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Shoot me a direct message on YouTube at @aline_SC. I'll try to respond to it as quickly as I see it. And once again, don't forget to make Locked On College Basketball your second listen now that you have listened to or watched the Locked On Gamecocks podcast. Again, thank y'all so much for tuning in. Have a great rest of your Friday afternoon and evening, and have a fantastic weekend. I will catch y'all on the next full show of the Locked On Gamecocks podcast once again on Monday.